Welcome to Stop and Scare. If you're new to my channel, please be sure to subscribe now for future content. And if you would like to have a scary story of your own featured on an upcoming video, email the email in the description box below. Tonight's video is featuring true scary trick-or-treat horror stories. It being the first couple days of October and all, it only seemed fitting. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a good scare. Story number 1. It was Halloween night and the streets were filled with children dressed in various costumes, eagerly going from house to house, collecting candy and treats. Among them was a young girl named Lily, dressed as a witch, accompanied by her friend, a boy named Tim, who was dressed as a vampire. They were determined to collect as many treats as possible, but there was only one house they were warned never to visit. The house was at the end of the street, surrounded by tall trees and overgrown bushes. Its windows were boarded up, and a large keep out sign hung on the front gate. The children had heard rumors about the house being haunted, and that a witch lived there, who would curse anyone who dared to approach. But the temptation of more candy was too great. They decided to take a chance. As they made their way towards the house, they could feel a chill in the air, and the sound of their own footsteps seemed to echo loudly. The house appeared even more ominous up close, and they hesitated for a moment before ringing the doorbell. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway and a figure standing in the shadows. "Trick or treat!" the children shouted in unison, holding out their bags for candy. The figure stepped forward, revealing itself to be an old woman with wrinkled skin and piercing eyes. She didn't say anything, but instead handed each of them a small box before disappearing back into the shadows. The children were puzzled but excited to see what was inside the boxes. They opened them simultaneously, only to find nothing but a small note that read, "You shouldn't have come here." Suddenly, the room began to spin, and the children felt their bodies being lifted off the ground. They felt like they were being pulled into a vortex, and their screams echoed through the empty house. When they opened their eyes, they found themselves in a dark, damp cellar, surrounded by cobwebs and the stench of decay. They tried to scream, but their throats were too dry, and their bodies were too weak. Suddenly, they heard a voice whispering in their ears, a voice that sounded like it was coming from all directions. "Welcome to my home," the voice hissed. "You were warned not to come here, and yet you didn't listen. Now, you shall pay the price." The children were terrified, not knowing what was going to happen to them. They tried to move, but their bodies were paralyzed, and they could only watch in horror as the old woman appeared before them, holding a small cauldron. "Tonight you shall become my potions," she declared, before throwing them into the cauldron. They felt their bodies melting, and their minds going numb, as the old woman cackled with delight. It was the last thing they remembered before they blacked out. The next morning, Lily and Tom woke up lying on the curb outside the haunted house. They had no recollection of what had happened after they were given the boxes, but they knew one thing for sure: they would never go trick-or-treating again. Story number 2. I knocked on the door and a woman answered. "Aren't you too old to trick-or-treat?" she said. I shrugged. "Last year of high school," I said. "Candy's for children," she said, her hand clamped over her basket of candy, her lips firm, her eyes narrowed. As I walked back to the sidewalk, my thin garbage bag fluttering in the wind, a ghost, a witch, and Superman, all 2 heads shorter than me, marched past me. Their cheeks were rosy, and their fingers were plump, covered tightly around their pumpkin trick-or-treat baskets. 4 feet and under, an imaginary broadcaster announced in my head, amidst whimsical music, "Trick or treat. Have a balloon. Have a ball. Have a candy. The world is your oyster." I turned to look back at the woman. She was beaming at the children. The setting sun shone upon their faces as they yelled, "Trick or treat!" The woman smiled like the Cheshire cat as she dropped colorful candies into their baskets. Rainbow Nerd Twists, Silver Musketeers, Jolly Ranchers from green apple to blue raspberry to strawberry. She stared at the children with hungry enthusiasm. I turned away and started to walk home. The suburban houses decorated with candle-lit pumpkins. Plastic skeletons and cobwebs on the windows began to fade, and soon I was in a darker, sketchier area of the neighborhood. Maybe with a friend, I would have had the courage to toilet paper that woman's house. Maybe I would have thrown an egg out or two. Maybe Alan would do that with me. Last year, a man emailed my father. He was an old friend from Vietnam War days. The man came over with his son Alan, a junior in high school like me at the time. I remember I told Alan a joke or something bad with a cheesy pun about strawberries or something, and he laughed. When he laughed, I felt such a rush, like I had just eaten a candy. I like candy, but my father is against sweet stuff because it's bad for the teeth, so the only time I get candy is on Halloween. Anyway, as my father's old friend was leaving, Alan gave me his AIM username. We talked a bit online. I asked my dad when they'd be coming over again. He said he didn't like that old friend much anymore. "We have different values," he said. Alan and I slowly stopped talking, but I think he would have egged the house with me. I approached my house. For a second I saw my father and his pre-war friend on the lawn, Alan laughing at my joke. Alan trick-or-treating with me. Lots of candy falling from the sky, falling into our open, laughing mouths. Then the streetlight flickered on, and I saw that the sky was black, and there was no candy falling. There would be no more candy for me from now on. Next week I'd be 18. No one would give a shit if I sat homeless on the street, and if I did something it would be jail time. It was time to pull myself up by the bootstraps, make a life of myself. I was an adult now. All I needed to start my life, several $1,000s for the first semester of college. I thought I had several 20s lying around in my piggy bank. I faced the house, the windows and barred door black and empty like toothless gaps in an old man's mouth. Before going in, I opened the rusted jaws of the bent mailbox. Envelopes advertising community colleges, loans promising happiness via smiling stock models with graduation caps, high interest in fine print, and lastly a birthday card from the whore, as my father called my mother. In the curly letters it said, "Happy 18th birthday." The $50 bill fluttered down from the envelope. I picked it up and went inside. In the living room, my father sat on the sofa, watching the screen with zombie attention, beer cans scattered all over the floor. "Get another can for me, will you?" he said, his eyes red-veined in a ruddy face. I got him one and snuck another into my room. I walked to my desk and sat down. In the mirror, my reflection was sallow and tired, crow's feet branching unattractively under my eyes. The wrinkles would grow larger and larger from now on, until everything would give like a net crumbling into a mess of blood and bone, and I was ashes in the ground. The silence of my room surrounded me like bubble wrap. I pulled out a Ziploc bag from my backpack Inside were special candies. It had taken a lot of time and money to save up for them. "Sure you need this much?" Jonas had asked. "Yeah," I said. "For a party." Party? I hadn't been to a party since I was 6 years old and went to Samantha Johnson's birthday. I hesitated as I rolled the candies over in my hands. Maybe there was another way. Maybe I could call Alan up. Maybe I could call my mom up and ask for money that she could get from her rich new sugar daddy. I could use that to actually go to college, somewhere far, far away. I fumbled for my phone and called my mom. She answered. "Hello?" "Hey," I said. "Is this a solicitor?" She asked. "Because you know I have no patience for it." "It's Tracy, Mom." I cut in. "Oh, T," she gushed. "Sorry I haven't called. I've just been so busy. What's up?" "Yeah," I said, listen, I have a favor to ask, I guess." "Yeah?" she said. Then I heard her yell, "Mason, get off your sister. I'm not fucking around." I hesitated, rolling the candies over and over. The sweat from my palms were making them sticky. "Sorry, honey," she said. "You know how kids are. They're such a handful. I can't even get a minute to myself." "Oh, yeah?" I said. Well, I'm thinking of applying to college." "Mason, I swear I'm going to throw that truck of yours into the swimming pool if you don't do that one more time." I bit my lip. "Sorry, honey," she said. "Listen, I'm preoccupied right now. It's not even funny. Can I call you back tomorrow?" Yeah, sure," I said. "Yeah, totally." There was a beep and the phone went silent. What was I thinking? I smiled. She was not going to call tomorrow. She always said that. Every time. And Alan played guitar and was cool and handsome and friendly. He wasn't going to go. Oh, you know what? That girl I talked to last year? I wonder what she's up to. The future loomed in front of me like a coffin ready for me to fall into. The red coating on the candies had melted off. They sat in my stained palm as pale pink as skinned cadavers. I shoved the candies into my mouth. I shuddered as I chewed them into a bitter paste and swished it all down with beer. One by one I swallowed the candies. First the worst, second the best, third the turd. My life was a turd, a dirty bird. I stumbled off my chair and onto the ground. My head careened and my stomach was on fire. I was on a treacherous ocean, the world swaying around me, and I was seasick and stranded. Lightning smashed through my skull. The seagulls laughed and swooped down, clawing the lines deeper and deeper into my eyes. I threw my hands wildly into the air to fend them off until I was exhausted and lay there on the ground, just looking up. Silence soon crept over everything like a muddied blanket. The whimsical music started up again. "Trick, trick, trick," he screeched. "No one gives a fuck about you. That's right. Fucking jump. Just jump. Eat it. Eat it all, you little shit." The balloons popped and waves pulled me under as he popped candy after candy down my throat. Sweet candies. Sleep candies. Story number 3. When my two friends K and B and I were out trick-or-treating, we decided to go to the rich area since we lived in the more poor middle-class area. While we were entering the rich neighborhood, a truck with 5 to 6 men drove past us and yelled something. We assumed they were drunk. We decided to ignore them, be on our way to get the good candy. We were just minding our own business when the truck stops at about 20 feet ahead of us. At this point, The three of us are starting to feel very uneasy. We all decided to stop and see what these men were planning on doing. One of the men hopped out of the truck bed and then reaches his arm into the truck, pulls out a chainsaw. The man then proceeded to run full speed at us with the chainsaw. This freaked the hell out of us. Kay and I ran up one side of the street towards a friend's house in hopes to hide out there. B ran in the opposite direction. Kay and I lost the man with the chainsaw after a few minutes, but we hadn't heard from B in a while. After about a half hour of calling B's phone and wandering around the neighborhood, we finally found him. This was one of the most terrifying experiences that I've ever experienced. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the very end. If you are new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe now. Turn on the notifications as well so you don't miss out on a thing. If you want your story featured on the next video, email it to the email in the description box below. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay sinful.